Welcome to Brave, Bold, Brilliant, Jason. Nice to have you.
Thank you very much. Very, very happy to be here.
Well, eventually we got our diaries organised.
We did. We did. It took a little while, but we got there. We
All
got
good
there.
things come to those who wait.
Indeed, that is so true.
Apparently. Now, you have had an illustrious career, currently CEO of Arcturus Group, and you're going to explain to us what's included in Arcturus Group.
I can.
So I think, in fact, let's do that first, because when you actually start explaining the organisation, people go, oh, yeah, now I recognise those incredible brands, right?
Exactly that.
So
Yeah.
start with that. And then I want us to have a look at where things started and kind of how you've ended up in this, fantastic role as CEO.
Yeah, of course. So, yeah, I'm the CEO of Arcturus Group, which is a group I founded January of 2025. Owned by Trispan, who are a fabulous private equity house, who kind of have a bit of a specialism around restaurants and casual dining, because the three brands that sit under the umbrella of the group are Pho, which is a Vietnamese brand, Rosa's Thai, and Mowgli, which is an Indian brand. So there's about 125 restaurants in the group. And the reason we brought them together under this one umbrella was to realize all of those kind of operational synergies, business development, personal leadership development, and just see if we could create a platform for those three businesses to be even more effective.
Right. Okay. So there's a lot in here because world of hospitality, but you've had an illustrious career and you started on the shop floor, as we were talking about, right the way up to CEO.
Yeah.
So when you were starting out in those early days,
Yeah.
you can tell us what the first job was and all of that good stuff. But did you always know that you were going to become a CEO? Did you have that ambition, that vision when you were younger, starting out in the sector, or did it just evolve over time? Would you say?
Yeah, absolutely no ambition. Not no ambition, but no idea that I would get to here. I always describe myself as an unlikely CEO, and I say that for a couple of reasons. And this is not scientific, but I'll give you my rationale. That if you were to take the FTSE 100 and its CEOs as being broadly representative, then the proportion of that group that are male, well, that's most of them. So I get that one. But I'm gay. There's, I think, currently I think it's one out gay CEO in the FTSE 100. I think so. I don't think it's much more than that. I'm not white, which would be most of the rest of the FTSE 100. I'm not university educated. I left school when I was 16, when we'll come back to that, where I started my job. Um, and I'm from a, council house background. We grew up in some tough areas. And I think if you combine all of those things, then statistically speaking, I'm a highly unlikely CEO.
Yeah.
So from that start point, then I think that, yeah, I mean, I grew up as the only non-white kid in a very white area. Well, me and my brother. And we're talking sort of, 1980s, horribly bullied all the way through school. So I couldn't wait to get out. So, came 16, I left with next to no qualifications, and went to work for Tesco, on the shop floor, stacking shelves, working checkouts, and loved work from the day I started, because they absolutely didn't care, who you are, where you came from, what color you were. All they cared about was, could you work hard?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've never been shy of working hard. And I think that was the start of the rest of my life almost. And I did 10 years with Tesco in the end, but sort of joined their management trainee program, learned everything that they did in a supermarket, which back then, you'll remember, they was when they still had fishmongers and butchers and bakers and all those kind of things. So I got to learn all of those skills, got to learn to manage people, had my first direct reports when I was about 17. And grew up in that business all the way to sort of when I was 26, 27. And then I came out of it, went into restaurants. But just an incredible proving ground, for somebody starting out. And it still is, to be honest. I think, hospitality and retail are a couple of the very rare sectors where you can still join on the shop floor and finish in the boardroom. I don't think there are many of those kind of organizations, and school and university and those sorts of things, it isn't for everybody. And whilst I don't advocate for not finishing your education, clearly you should definitely do that. Um, there is another way. You can get there. You might have to. It might be a bit convoluted, but there is a route there. So I think that from that start point, I did the sort of shop floor in Tesco's, and then when I went into restaurants, I went back to the floor and retrained in the kitchen as a bartender. And I worked for TGI Fridays back in the sort of mid-90s, which was an amazing proving ground as well. So everything I didn't learn in supermarkets, I did learn in TGI Fridays, about how to lead people, how to communicate, how to maintain standards. So it was an incredible sort of background. And I think those two somewhat formative experiences have been what's got me to this role. But to come back to your question, did I ever imagine I'd be here? Absolutely not.
No, it's interesting, isn't it? Because as you were talking, I was thinking, well, it just shows that actually, that anyone can achieve anything with the right people around them, the right environment, putting one foot in front of the other, even if you haven't got a big master plan, because great, now I've got a purpose, I've got a vision, I know where I'm headed with my life. And actually, it's messy,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Careers, business, life is messy. There isn't always a straight path. And I think what you've described there for anyone that's listening, one, education isn't for everyone. There's, not everyone fits into a typical sort of school environment, do they? And like you were saying, if you've got kids around you and you've been bullied and you've got all of that starting out in life, that's pretty tough. And you must have had to have quite a thick skin then when you were quite young. And where were you growing up, Jason? Where was actually home?
The Medway town, so sort of North Kent.
Oh yeah, yeah, I know. Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I I don't know that I had a thick skin. I think that there's something about resilience, isn't there? Resilience and tenacity and grit or whatever. Not that I thought I was that person at the time,
No.
but as I reflect back on it now, and as I use it as a sort of leadership lesson to myself or to others, is that if you just keep soaking it up but carry on regardless, then that is the definition of tenacity and
Yeah.
resilience.
Yeah.
It's if you have to quit, or have to do something different, or you let it get you down. And I think that's the point for me, that when you've done all that sort of stuff in your formative years, then when you're up against bad bosses, which we all do,
Yes.
or tough situations, or you get setbacks in your career, then you learn that you've got to pick yourself up from them, learn from what happened, and come back better. And I think that's served me well all the way through my career, because I mean, as you said, careers, they're messy, and mine's been, as messy as any. I've been, demoted twice, made redundant twice. You get knocked back, and how you pick yourself up from that, learn and move on again is the measure of the person, isn't it? Um,
100%. And with those early years then, Jason, with your mum and dad, and you said you had a brother,
mhm.
what was family life like though, in terms of, outside of the school and the sort of education system? What was life like at home for you growing up?
Uh, Fabulous, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and never wanted for love or food. So that's the foundation, isn't it? Ultimately, that knowing that where you fit within your own family environment is the basis for everything. And to be honest, I mean, I use it right up to and including now, that no matter how crap work is, and God knows it is sometimes, my family will still love me.
Yeah.
And that's all that really matters at the end of it. And so I think I've kind of used that throughout my life as, yes, this situation's terrible and maybe I'm unhappy here, but ultimately I'm still going home to something that is better and always constant. And I think, yes, I mean, whilst we weren't dirt poor or anything, but we grew up in council houses, and we come from I come from working class stock. Um, it was I had a good childhood.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, and that's solid foundations of being loved, like you say, not really wanting for anything that you needed in terms of the basics of life.
Yeah.
Actually, I think is the heart, isn't it? And it just means that when you're having a tough time, you've got that place to go back to, those people that are always going to be on your side to a certain degree.
Yeah.
They may call you out, and so,
Oh, they definitely called me
yeah.
out.
Certainly, my family do the same. Or
Yeah.
if I get a bit too big for me boots, sometimes my husband will go, you know what?
Yeah,
You've
yeah.
ordered him now.
No.
Remember where you come from.
I have my brother for that. He regularly reminds me of my place.
That we
You
need
do, of
that,
course you
don't we?
do. Yeah.
So I think that solid foundation is great. So long time at Tesco, great
Yeah.
brand, and an opportunity to work from literally the shop floor up
Yep.
through the organisation, which is great. And I would actually add travel to the industries as well, that where as an example where you can also do
Yeah.
that. Whether you're a rep back in the days, or
Yeah.
you're in a call centre, or you're in a travel agent,
Yeah.
it is a career that you can start on the operations
Side
side,
things, yeah.
learn the trade literally, and then have that trajectory up to sort of management and stuff,
Mhm.
and leadership. So I think that's great to have done that. So from Tesco, you
Mhm.
jumped into hospitality then,
I
didn't
did,
you? And you
yeah.
had quite a long, well, most of your career after that has
It's
been
been
hospitality,
hospitality.
hasn't
Yeah,
it?
it has, yeah.
So what was catalyst for from leaving Tesco and the next move for you?
I mean, I can distinctly remember the moment I knew I was leaving Tesco because it was coming around on my 11th Christmas in Tesco. And as I was contemplating building Christmas displays of quality street and mince pies, I sort of took a long, hard look at myself and went, "Oh, I can't do this anymore. I need to do something different."
Yeah.
And it's really interesting, actually. Somebody back then, what were then called, personnel managers or staff managers, HR managers, not even they weren't HR managers there, but they were personnel or staff managers. But there was a fabulous one, and she said to me, she recommended a leadership book called The Psychology of Success, and she went, "Listen, you should listen to this." And I mean, it's horribly dated now, but it basically it did all those things around, ask yourself the question that, if this was the last thing you ever did, or if this was your last year on earth, and all those kind of things. Are these the things you would do?
Yeah.
And I just came away from it, and I went and found her afterwards and just said, "Look, I just need to let you know that I've listened to that Psychology of Success, and I'm leaving." So, uh, so it's kind of worked.
Sure, it's the way she intended it, but
Not
yeah.
quite, but that's what got me out. And then back then, I can remember it like I think it was the Daily Mail had a Thursday job section. Every Thursday, the Daily Mail there's a job section, and there was this big advert for TGI Fridays. We're recruiting, trainee managers come and work for us, all the Erasmus. And I remember going up to Covent Garden and Haymarket and sort of going for the interviews and doing silly things and just got the gig, but took a 30% pay cut to go into the role. Moved up to London from Kent, where I'd spent the entire of my life, and found TGI Fridays, and at that point, kind of found my calling, and that was people and communication, because ultimately those are the two things that I love and I think I'm good at. And then probably the other big thing was that for as much as my opening comments about being a gay CEO, I came out when I was 19, so 1989, but I didn't come out of work until a decade later.
Wow. Okay.
Supermarkets, very macho,
Mm.
very full on environments back then through the 80s and the early 90s. So coming out of work was just not something I was ever going to do. But as soon as I got to Fridays, I was out from the day I arrived and never went back in that closet. So because that was the kind of culture and environment it was full of actors and dancers and all the things that it was back then. And so that was at the point that I genuinely sort of brought my whole self to work and did all that sort of stuff around just being who I was. And that is so powerful because as any gay person who's been in and then comes out tells you burn vast quantities of energy maintaining a double life
Mm.
in
It
your
must have been
in your
really tough.
in your speech, in your how you talk about people, and how you talk about your weekend, in how you talk or don't talk about things. So yeah, TGI Fridays was a complete eye opener in that respect, because that was the first time in which I was sort of fully me.
Yeah.
But also just utterly exposed to all these fabulous people who were absolutely crackers, most of them. They're resting actors and dancers and what have you, just desperate for their big break and working really hard to be the best they could be. But you'd find them rehearsing dance steps on the back dock, and and it was just a great place to be back then. And I feel sad for Fridays now because I think it's
Yeah.
been through a lot of trials over the last few years. But then we were still, you know, 2 hour wait on the door and six deep at the bar, and people would wait an hour or 2 hours for a table,
It
and
was the place to
it was
be.
the place to be.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was the place
absolutely.
to be, and I had a fabulous, fabulous time. And I think probably there is when I sort of really met, two or three people that became sort of mentors and sponsors of mine that just were influential then in the next stages of my career. So, a guy called Adrian Johnson, who was my area manager, ops director when I first got there, he gave me my first he gave my first big break as a restaurant manager, um, and he also taught me some really valuable lessons. Actually, that I was an assistant manager and a assistant general manager, and was waiting to get my first restaurant, and one came up and I didn't get it. And I remember sitting down with him and like basically throwing my dummy out and saying I was going to leave and what have you. Why are you going to do that, Mike? Because I didn't get which restaurant was Croydon or Crawley or somewhere like that. And I went, I didn't get Croydon or Crawley as a GM. And he went, "Did you apply?" I'm like, well, no, because I was next in line. And he went, "Well, if you didn't apply, then how am I supposed to know that you want the job?" And I'm like, "Uh, oh yeah, okay, then that's a really good point."
You just
I
assumed.
just assumed that I was the guy.
Yeah.
And then he went, "Stick with me, you'll be all right." And then true to form, when the next one came up, I got my hat in the ring as early as I could, and sure enough, I got the gig. But I think he took a chance on me more than once in my career. Um, and then when I left TGI Fridays and went to work for Travelodge, which was my first sort of step into working in a private equity backed business as well,
Mm.
the guy that brought me across had been the MD of Fridays, and he brought me across to work in Travelodge. So again, people that you build relationships with, that you do the right thing by, that work hard and impress, and all sorts of those things that then sponsor you through the rest of your career.
Mm.
Which I think goes to the core of who I am as a leader as well. That I think the the power, if that's the right word, and influence I have to help other people up the ladder is huge, and it's only right and proper that I do it because so many people did it for me. And I think that's at the core of who my when I think about my leadership now, it's about how do I help the rest up this up the pathway and give them the chances and what have you, because everyone needs a chance somewhere. Everyone needs someone to take a chance on them sometimes. And I think there's been, probably half a dozen people over the last 20 years that have been really influential in that respect.
And I think you get to a certain stage in your career, and I think both of it. I'm not sure how. I think I'm older than you anyway, Jason.
Well,
But
let's not talk about
let's not
age.
talk. So it's irrelevant,
It's just a
really.
number.
But you do get to a point, don't you, in your career where it becomes much more around kind of giving back. Yes, you're still ambitious and you still want to build a business and be successful and continue to learn and grow yourself, but it does become much more about the other people. It becomes much more around giving back and being able to sort of support other people in their careers. And you're right, there are pivotal moments, aren't there, where you meet certain individuals and you just click. There's something either, or they see something in you that you don't see in yourself.
Yeah.
It's happened to me a couple of times in my career, and I thought, oh bloody hell, really me? All right, well, little old me, off to Russia. Oh, go on then. And a big kind of pivotal person in my career was Richard Prosser, and he was the boss at one of my bosses at TUI, and I'm still in touch with Richard to this day. But he took a chance on me, and he saw something in me, and then that really was a massive turning point for my career. I kind of really went like the clappers from there, so to speak. But when you meet those people and they do give you that sort of opportunity, how did you feel at the time? Because I know when I've been given those opportunities, I almost sort of felt like I didn't want to let them down as much
Oh,
as want to do a good job. It was almost this sort of, oh my God, this person has put their trust and faith in me. I've got to make it a success because otherwise, I'm letting them down.
yeah,
But it felt a lot like that to me when I had those moments. I don't know if you felt the same or.
exactly the same. That
Mm.
I can 100% picture myself sitting down with each of these people and saying to them, actually, I won't let you down. Thank you for doing this. I won't let you down. And you're right. You then move heaven and earth to make that so, don't you? Because you don't want to let them down.
Mm.
And not that they've ever given me cause to think I owed them something either.
No, 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 not at
Um,
all. But
but yeah, you do, don't you? You want to do your best for those people because they tried for you.
yeah,
But yeah, I think it's those people are so critical. And just quickly tell one story about one other person that's been a real sort of influential in my career, and it kind of relates to background. And my background is that I've been, successful by most people's measures on in my career, but I always believed I got there because I could work harder than you.
mm,
Because I left school with no qualifications, I always had it in my head I was a little bit slow. Um, and so, I didn't have the intellectual capacity to keep up with you, but I can work harder than you. So,
mm,
working hard was my go-to. I'm going to start earlier than you. I'll finish later than you every single day because it's the only way I can get there because I can't outthink you. Um, and I carried this sort of, I was confident in everything I did pretty much other than intellectually. And one, I've kind of always read a lot all the way through my life. So I'd read to have knowledge.
yeah.
Um, but when I was, but I did have a real chip on my shoulder about not going to university
Did
and not
you?
having qualifications and what have you. Yeah.
Was that all in your own head, or was it the environment and people would comment or make certain, judgments around you, or was it all internal, do you think, or was there a reason for you to feel that
Oh, I think it
way?
was all internal.
Do
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't believe I ever got judged for not having a university degree. I mean, after a certain point, it's utterly irrelevant anyway.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but I think why it was relevant to me was that um, so I worked for TGI Fridays and it was owned by Whitbread back then. And then I left for 5 or 6 years, and then I came back to Whitbread with Costa Coffee.
Yes.
Same boss, Adrian Johnson, the guy that made me a GM in TGI Fridays, also made me the first national ops director of Costa. Um, and and also subsequently sponsored me to become the MD of Costa when he stepped down as well.
Mm,
Um,
fantastic.
but the guy that ran Costa back then was a guy called Chris Rogers, who was previously the CFO of Whitbread. Hugely talented, hugely successful man. But he took a decision in his career to come and run Costa. So he stepped out of his CFO role in the PLC
Mm,
and became the CEO of Costa effectively. And he knew my history and all the rest of it, and he was the one sort of signed off on becoming MD. But then back then, Whitbread sent two people to Harvard every year for the Harvard Advanced Management Program, which was this like 9-10 week residential program. Like they sort of pocket MBA. It's not an MBA, but it's
and it's
incredible.
Harvard.
It's Harvard, exactly. Harvard. It's
Hello.
incredibly intense.
Yes.
Even back then, I think it cost $80,000 that course. And Whitbread sent two people every year. And I wanted to go. I was sort of, from a performance perspective, I was in the running to be the kind of person that went.
Mm,
But one of the criteria was you had to have a degree. You had to have gone to university, or at least be educated to a pretty high standard. And I clearly wasn't. But Chris wrote a commendation letter for me to the examining board at Harvard to tell them why they should accept me onto the course because of the history I've just explained and
mm,
the fact that it wasn't that I lacked the smarts, it was just I lacked the opportunity.
yeah.
And they accepted me, and I went on that course, and it was genuinely life changing. Um, and they do tell you when you do that course that it might be life changing for you, and you're a little bit British cynical about it at the beginning, but it genuinely was life changing because I think I then realized quite quickly that all of these super educated, super successful executives that I was with, all their degrees and their MBAs and all the rest of it, that I was keeping up with them without, it was hard work,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but and having I'd not been in school for about 30 years at that
Mm,
point,
mm.
but it was, you know, it was amazing, and I was keeping up. And then we got to things like, you know, operations and people, and suddenly I was the expert in the room. And I was like, wow, how did this happen? You know, you're sort of getting cold called by the professor. Oh, what does Jason think about this? I'm like, who?
Not me.
Yeah, oh, me. And that was just, it was a revelation to me. I just came back from it with a kind of an intellectual confidence to go with my track record in business, sort of thing, which just, it was just game changing for me. But down to sponsors and mentors, down to an organization like Whitbread with a real focus on the long-term development of its people and investing in people for the long run.
Yeah.
And having a great, and it having a great people culture that just valued the people in the organization. And I think businesses like that are incredible. You know, you can understand why a business like Whitbread's been around for some 300 years or whatever it is now, because that's the kind of organization it is. And that's deeply admirable and aspirational, I think, for any organization.
Yeah, and going to Harvard, did that lay a ghost to rest for you then as well? Do
Yeah.
you think, in terms of the sort of chip on your shoulder that you might have had about non-university educated, that just went?
Yeah, I flicked it off after that. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah, brilliant.
stopped.
But
And interestingly, and I say this advisedly, stopped working so hard as well, because you suddenly realize, you go, hang on a minute, I don't just need to work hard, I can do the work smart bit.
yeah, yeah. Well, you proved to yourself,
Yeah,
haven't you, more than
completely.
everyone
Yeah,
else? And what do
completely.
your parents say? Are your parents still with us?
Yeah, I know my mum's not, my dad is, but yeah.
Okay, and when you're going through all of this, and
Yeah.
they know obviously how you would have been at school, and
Yeah.
then to see their son, like, oh my God, Harvard, you know,
Yeah.
they must have been super
Oh,
proud.
they were, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, and
Yeah.
you know, yeah, they yeah, you just your parents, they kind of, they try and equip, well, I think for all of us as parents, you know, you're trying to equip your children with the right values, aren't you? And if nothing else, then a propensity to work hard and get on. But yeah, I mean, I don't think they would have seen me, and certainly not if they, you know, if you knew 16-year-old me, then there's not a chance you'd have believed I could be where I am.
Which, you know, I mean, is all credit, because, well, you stayed humble, you've worked your ass off, right?
I have, yeah.
You've acknowledged and done a lot of work on yourself, I think, from what you've described, whether it was intentional or just kind of, you know, going on in the background. And you've got the fire in the belly, the ambition to want to make a difference, very much leaning into your natural abilities of communication and people, which actually is nothing to do with, you know, an education. That's just being a good human being, right?
Yeah.
Which amazingly,
leveraging those things.
It sounds simple, but a lot of people aren't always, right?
Yeah, true.
So I think, you know, your journey has been fascinating, but also I think encouraging for anyone listening, because it proves, you know, that whilst, yes, the odds may have been stacked against, if you look at the statistics, as you said when we first started, but anything is possible if you can dream big and you're prepared to put the work in, and accept you're going to get the knockbacks, you're going to get the rejections, you're going to get the redundancies, the non-promotions. And actually, I think this is where people sometimes go wrong, is they don't expect that stuff to happen. Whereas if you expect you're gonna fail, you're gonna get rejected, then it's not such a shock. You just go, okay, well, I expected that.
Yeah.
Dust myself off. What did I learn? And go again.
Yeah.
And your career has definitely been one of reinvention as well, I would say, as you've continued to evolve, right?
Yeah.
Because you were 10 years at Costa, right? That was a long time.
It was, yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
But I want to go back a little bit, just because I'm interested, and I didn't ask the question at the time. So you said you came up when you were 19, and then it was 10 years in sort of, you know, world of work before you found the right environment at TGI to feel comfortable to do that. What was it like, that double life side of things? How hard was it when you look back?
Well, I think we should place it, because I think that for the generation that went before me,
Yes,
it was illegal. You were going to prison for being gay.
which you can't even
No,
comprehend.
so it's, you know,
today's
it's
world.
well within living memory and all the rest of it. So
Yes.
so I was blessed that I wasn't in that generation.
Yeah.
My generation got HIV and AIDS as the
Yeah.
thing we carried through that generation,
Yeah.
and everything we didn't know about it back then. And therefore, when you were in a work context, almost, why would you tell anybody that you were gay?
Mm.
Because you weren't certain to be treated differently, but you were almost certain to be treated differently. You were, much more likely to be overlooked for promotion or for, for anything really, because once you were in that category, then you're sort of guilt by association for anyone else that happened to know you at that point. And so, yeah, I think that, I was in a long-term relationship and what have you, but you spend your life swapping all the he's for she's and
Yeah.
for they and we and avoiding the we. And if you show a photograph, it's always a group photograph, never
Hard
just a couple,
work.
because it's just hard work all of the time,
Well, it
and you
shouldn't be
get good at
relevant,
it.
should it really? I mean, it shouldn't be relevant. And we, but it is. We
Yeah,
still talk about it's important
it's
still.
it is still important. Yeah, I think that I mean, thankfully the world has moved on
Yeah,
massively,
for
and
sure.
and I see, you know kids in my sort of broader circle, in within my family and wider family, that sort of came out when they were 16 and what have you, and good on them, and I wish them long and happy lives doing everything they want to do,
Yeah.
and rightly so. um that's not the case for everybody. Still, there's still plenty of prejudice out there for,
Mm.
in particular places, in particular families, and that particular people are dealing with. And also, even given all of that much better environment, you still feel different from the get-go, and acknowledging your difference is hard for some people, really, really hard.
Mm.
And that is still to be borne in mind. And I think from a sort of a leadership and work perspective, I mean, I've never been a particular flag waver for gay people, or for LGBT things in general, but I think that as I've got older, more than one person quite recently has told me I should be more vocal about it, because there aren't that many gay senior people.
Well, as a role model.
Exactly, and not that, and it's not a role that I've ever sought either. So I've
No.
kind of, because I think also that the flip of it is that, and, and gender's the other thing about it, isn't it? Is you don't want to think you're in the job because
Just
you're that
because,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
tokenism. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
you kind of avoid it, and just measure me on my performance, not
Yeah.
who I sleep with. And I think that's just that's always in your mind if you go too hard on it, I think. But nonetheless, I think it is still important. And I think the environments and the cultures that we create, particularly in this sort of DEI backlash era that we're living through at the moment, is kind of even more important, isn't it?
Yeah, 100% agree. And very different to the gender topic,
Yeah.
because, but when I started out in my career, I remember getting my first board position, and I was the only woman in the boardroom
Yeah.
with a P&L.
Yeah.
No disrespect to our female colleagues in HR,
No,
and
no.
thank God, they
Yeah,
led the way.
they did.
But to have a full P&L, it was unusual.
Yeah.
But I remember saying to myself, if I walk into the room thinking there's going to be a problem, there will be a problem.
Yeah.
Because I'm self-identifying that I am different
Yeah.
from the men in the grey suits, and
Yeah.
I am. However, I've just got to focus on do what I say I'll do the best job I can, be as true to my values, be a kind, compassionate leader.
Yeah.
Thereafter, we'll see what happens,
Yeah.
And I used to have that sort of internal dialogue,
Yeah.
but sometimes I'd be like, right.
Dig
And it
in.
was like if I had like a pair of virtual balls that I could like strap on. So I used to come home and say to Chris, my husband, he said, "Yeah," he said, "Did you get them out of the drawer today?" we just joke about it, Obviously, it's not very PC to say this, but
Yeah.
but that was the environment
True.
at the time.
Yeah.
So I did used to put my virtual balls on and then kind of go in and do the budget meeting or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But the world has shifted, thank God.
Thank God. Yeah. Yeah.
But there's still a bit more to be done, I think, and that's the thing.
Yeah, I think from time to time it's
Yeah.
still worth being vocal about it,
Yeah.
if you've got the creds to be vocal about it.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, for me particularly, then clearly I have I think I have a good story. I don't mind telling it to people,
Yeah.
but equally I don't make a big
It
deal
doesn't
out of it.
define you.
It doesn't define me, exactly that.
Yeah.
And I would be disappointed if that was how I got defined.
No, absolutely. No, completely right. Completely right. So coming back to the Costa,
Yeah.
10 years at Costa, great mentor, advocate, sponsor that had kind of, you know,
Mhm.
you're kept with was it Adrian?
Adrian, yeah,
Through
yeah,
you know the different positions he was in,
yeah,
and that also says something, right? That you went with him multiple times, and
yeah.
he was, you know, so that endorsement wasn't just a one-off.
No, 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 it wasn't. No, no.
um,
He kept the faith.
he kept the
He did.
faith. He kept the faith. He loved you all the way.
Yeah.
And Costa, long time at Costa, and then after Costa, we're talking Itsu, right? After that, was it?
Ole Steen and then itsu. So
Ah,
yeah,
Ole Steen. Yes, you've
yeah,
always had these big brands.
yeah,
You've always been drawn to big brands. Was that a
yeah.
conscious choice?
No, my choices have always been about, do I think I can enjoy this? Do I think I can be passionate about it?
Yeah. Okay.
Because I think when you come to, if people and communication are my sweet spot, it's very hard. Well, I can't do that without believing in what it is
Yeah.
I'm doing.
Yeah.
I mean, other people can. I mean, clearly that's the art of many things, but not mine. Mine has to come from somewhere sort of in the heart that is, okay, I care about this thing.
Yeah.
Therefore I can talk passionately and eloquently about it. So yeah, I think yeah, I mean, absolutely tremendous business. So if anyone doesn't know it, so it's a Danish business. So it's called Laukehusel in Danish, which no one can say. So they renamed it Ole and Steen, which are the two founders.
Okay.
They're the two bakers that founded it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I'm an absolutely tremendous business, household name in Denmark, and had 8 or 10 sites in the UK when I took it over. In a wonderful piece of timing, it was my first CEO gig,
Mm.
and I got the job. I started in the August of 2019, and obviously by the February of 20, we were in lockdown.
Yes. Perfect
So
timing.
perfect timing, yeah. So just about got my feet under the table, written the business plan for 2020, and then suddenly we were in lockdown, which was, I mean, like all these things, and back to the resilience, tenacity, sort of courage thing, is that what you're going to do, you can't control it. You had to roll with every punch that came, and you
Yeah.
had to work out how you were going to respond and what you were going to do, and I remember saying to the team just before we sent them all home and everyone went, into lockdown, and we called them all together. Really, probably shouldn't have done, but an all hands meeting in the canteen at in our office in Copenhagen, and I just said to him, look, I'm being really honest with you. I have no idea what's going to happen next.
Mm.
I said, but all I can promise you is we will continue to lead the organisation with the values that have been important to us thus far, and I will do everything I can to protect jobs and livelihoods. And then we sent them home. But we did it. We didn't make anybody redundant in Denmark. We kept the entire team in the UK. We actually let them all go in New York, but then that was because that was the best decision for them, because I don't know if you remember this, but the American government decided, rather than doing furlough, they did the opposite and significantly enhanced unemployment benefit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
actually letting the team
It was
go
better for
was the
them
best thing we could
financially.
do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in each case, we set up massive, like everybody did, massive WhatsApp groups to
Yeah.
try and keep everyone linked in, and stupid quizzes online and all the rest of it. But at the core of it was stay true to your values.
Yeah.
And as me and my leadership team were everything we can do to keep everybody in a job for as long as we can. Um, and that was kind of what we did. But I also think that was I mean, I keep saying I should write a paper on it, but it was so interesting to run a business in 3 different countries through a pandemic and look at how each country and its culture responded so differently to the challenge.
Mm.
Because you've got sort of, at one extreme, you've got Denmark, massive social safety net, very community led, look after each other, rule abiding, high trusting government society. And then, with all due respect and love to my American friends, not that on the
No.
on the other side of the pond.
Yeah.
And just how people in their everyday lives and in their work lives just responded utterly differently
Mm.
to any instruction from government or mandate about anything, or suggestion they should do a different thing in a different way. And then you had the UK that was broadly, sort of geographically and behaviourally in the middle of those two things.
Yeah.
And I think that running a business through that period of time was absolutely fascinating.
Mm.
It was a real intellectual challenge as well as a physical and emotional challenge
Yeah,
of running a business
yeah.
and financial challenge.
Yeah, I mean, it
Um,
feels bizarre, doesn't it? Like looking back, it's almost like looking back at a movie. You know, you think
yeah,
about the crazy thing standing on the doorstep, banging your
banging your
pants on
pan
a Thursday for the NH.
for the NHS.
Really?
Yeah,
You know, sitting there at your desk with your pajama bottoms on
yeah,
and like
yeah.
people with a jacket and tie. I mean,
I'm
just
still doing that though. Yeah, that's
got
okay
your
though.
pajamas on under here, people. No, but it does. It's sort of surreal. But talk about having to. I mean, it was tough. It was
It was
it
tough.
was very very tough for anyone in a leadership position or anyone not in a leadership position
Yeah,
that's just trying to look after their family and pay the
yeah.
bills. Was that the hardest time for you professionally? Would you say?
I guess from a complexity perspective, yes, it must be, mustn't it? Because we were all flying blind all of the time, weren't we?
Yeah.
Nobody, but I guess that was almost helpful at times because nobody could tell you were doing it right or wrong because none of us had done it before.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It was no,
right,
there was
wrong,
no blueprint, was there?
who's judging?
Yeah.
Because you haven't done it before and neither have I. So this is what I think is best. Um, I think actually probably tougher was the cost of living crisis and then further exacerbated by Russia invading Ukraine. Because actually, for a baker, the two things that went up price the most were flour and energy. Those are the two things a baker uses the most of. So
Yeah.
for that business, it was horribly challenging in the almost 18 months after we were clear of the pandemic because the input price challenges for that business were just off the charts. And that was not quite as rewarding, to be honest, trying to navigate and guide a business through all of that because that was pretty tough.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, I think it was like all these things. You got to learn from it, haven't you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it sounds glib, doesn't it? But you really do. If you can get yourself in the headset of learning from the thing, then there's an upside to just
Mm.
about everything at that point, isn't there? Because you're going to take something away from it and try and be better as a result of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
What do you think you've learned the most about yourself over these years then? Because we've talked a lot around the different roles, where you started, where you are now, the twists, the turns, the highs, the lows. What do you think you've learned most about yourself?
wow. I think a couple of things. I think that a fair few years ago now, I worked with an exec coach for a while around defining purpose.
Mm.
Um, and after a number of sessions and a lot of talking, we finally got to it because I've often wanted to go into politics, um, but I don't really like the downsides of being a politician.
Yeah.
Because God, those guys go through hell, and whatever we pay them, it isn't enough. Um, but but that or I thought I'm never going to end up running the World Health Organization, but because that wouldn't be right either. But but what can I do? And ultimately I'm in a position of influence and power and have been for a long time. So what can I do to make the world better and serve my own purpose? And we eventually arrived at this sort of definition that my purpose in the world is to do good in the world by enabling others to realize their full potential.
Mm.
And that's what I come back to as the core of why I do what I do. So I do good in the world by trying to be a successful business leader and by lifting those people up around me whenever I can, and through creating great environments to work in. When we were in Costa, we had like the lowest team turnover in the industry by miles, record high engagement and all those kind of things. And that was all very deliberate. We were trying to be the best we could be
Yeah.
in order to create the culture in which people could rise. And I think that for me has been the sort of at the nub of why I do what I do now is you know the power and all the trappings of power are all very nice, but ultimately that's not what motivates me. It is definitely about how do I help others realize their potential in the way that people helped me.
Mm.
um, and that's at the core of why I do what I do, um, because I think that's a contribution, isn't it, to the world that is meaningful, and also it can be on a broad scale of employing 10 or 20,000 people, or it can be on a very very individual scale of helping someone through a tough spot because they know you're a person that's going to listen and wants to help.
Yeah.
And that sounds a bit fluffy, and I can be, hard nosed and commercial as you want me to be, because I enjoy making money too. That's that's the route through these things, isn't it? But I just think there's a right way to behave in business, and that this is the way I choose to behave, and I choose to try and lift up those around me as opposed to push anyone down.
Yeah, and you'd bang on. And you know what? It's not glib at all. And you come across that way. I mean,
Thank you.
we've only met each other a few times, but we met through Balance the Board,
We did,
right?
yeah,
Originally
yeah.
with the fabulous Holly Addison. So we've got to
Exactly.
give Holly a good
Shout out to Balance the Board.
And Balance the Board, yes, absolutely. But we met through that organisation, which is all about balancing the board, creating opportunities, diversity, equity, and inclusion. In all its wonderful colours, shapes, sizes, creeds, etc. So I think the fact that we met through that, through Balance the Board, kind of shows that we're quite aligned in what's important to us, and you do lead that way. You do come across that way, like, as a very authentic, someone that genuinely cares. Yes, you want to make profit for a business, but it's profit for good.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly that.
It's not a dirty word, is it? And if you're not a profitable organisation, then
we can't do the other stuff, can
employ
you?
more people and serve the customers and
Exactly.
create a good experience and everything. So I think it's great that you're clear on that purpose piece, because I think so many people aren't.
Yeah, that's true.
And actually, it's almost like the golden thread.
Yeah. Why do I do what I do? Because it's like, if you just turn up for the money, well, that gets very boring very quickly. We all need the money because we all have to live. But if that's the motivation, then it's some people's motivation. Far be it for me to judge. But I think that if you can find a deeper purpose to why you do the thing you do, then life's better.
I agree. For everyone, it's like dropping a pebble in a pond, isn't it?
Yeah.
That sort of ripple impact. So yeah, I mean, listen, you've achieved so much. You should feel really super proud of everything you've
Thank
done.
you.
Really, it's been fascinating chatting. And what would you say you're most proud of with all the various incredible roles that you've had? Businesses and the brands and the people you've worked with. What are you most proud of, do you think?
I mean, it's going to be the people. It's the people around that I look at now and go, wow, I think I played a small part in how that person got to where they are.
Yeah.
And that's the kick, isn't it? If there's a selfishness in this, it's the fact that I can look at these people and go, I helped with that. And I think that is it for me when I sort of see people that I've known for a long time getting promoted and getting bigger jobs and all the rest of it. There's a lady called Claire Preston Beer who's the
I know Claire.
You know Claire?
In fact, Claire
In fact, she's been on the pod, hasn't she?
So a few years ago, yes.
She and I have known each other for I don't know 15, 16 years now, and I've promoted Claire once when I think she was a regional director, and we made her the franchise director just before she was going to have her first baby, and which was a big signal back then around our commitment to women and commitment to gender and all those kind of things. And clearly we didn't do it as a signal. We did it because she was by far the most talented person we had. But I've been saying to her for years, it will be a happy day when she ends up my boss. Because that would be just, I genuinely want to work for someone who I helped up the ladder at some point and they've overtaken me.
Yeah.
So I think it's in all of that, isn't it? It's the people you helped along the way.
Yeah, most definitely. I didn't realise you two had worked together, but of course it's all okay. See, Brave Bold Brilliant. You get all these cool leaders on Brave Bold Brilliant. We love it. We love it all. No, this is great. But you're right. You're right. I think it's, what do you want to be known for? You have those big questions. What do you want written on your gravestone? What's the legacy you want to leave behind, and all that kind of good stuff. And certainly I've spent a lot of time thinking about that, and that's why I do what I do. I mean, we don't have kids, so I think it's also a factor for me around why am I here, because most people, they're leaving something for the next generation, through a birth line or whatever, or a bloodline, whereas for me, I don't have that out of choice, but nonetheless it does make you think at some point, oh God, what is my legacy then? Why am I here? And that's really what drives everything that I do now in my life. It's about helping other people unlock their potential,
Definitely.
you know, and I think we're quite aligned on that. So yeah, it's going to be an exciting next phase for you as well. There's life in the old dog yet, isn't there, Jason?
I
There's
think
plenty
so.
to
Yeah,
go,
more to do. Yeah,
plenty to be done
there's
still.
there's more to there's more to do. Yeah.
So you will have had loads of great advice. I want to hear what the best piece of advice is that you've been given, Jason. And I'm sure there's lots, but you're going to pick one.
I can't actually remember who exactly told me this, but it'll be one of these sponsors or mentors down the years. But I like career. Don't think of your career as a ladder. Think of it as a climbing frame. Because ladders aren't turning up and down, don't they? But if you're or you're falling off of it, that's not so good. But if you see your career as a climbing frame, then you've got room to move sideways and to go up and down and to, just to move around it, because careers are not linear. There's going to be ups and downs, and the more you can expose yourself to things that are probably not immediately the most interesting thing in the world, the broader you become as a leader, the broader you become as a human, and therefore you're much more likely, I think, to realize your full potential if you are open-minded about these things.
Yeah, and actually, that is a great piece of advice, as you were saying, because you've had the ups, you've had the downs, you've had the sideways,
Definitely on the
you've had
sideways,
the
yeah.
different brands, different organizations,
Yeah.
and you're totally right. It isn't linear. And if you expect, it's a bit like, if you don't expect to fail, then you're setting yourself up for disappointment, because you will do.
You're gonna fail, yeah.
Same way,
Absolutely.
it's not all going to be a straight line that's all perfect in your life, relationships, all business, whatever.
For sure.
That is a great. I think Sheryl Sandberg said something similar, didn't she, when
Did
she was
she?
at Facebook?
Oh,
Something
right.
about I think she said something.
If I stole it, I apologize for who I'm not crediting.
No, she didn't. She didn't describe that. She called it something like a jungle gym or something.
Yeah, same principle. Yeah, exactly.
But I think I always say, well, my career has been very squiggly.
Yes, exactly.
Squiggly. But yeah, I love that, and that is good advice, because you're right. You're open-minded, then, aren't you? You're not just doing this and this. You're actually doing this. You're opening your expansive sort of peripheral vision as well. That good stuff. So yeah, fantastic. So this year, Jason, if you were to describe this year in one word, what would it be and why? You like lots of words. I like lots of words, but again, I'm going to make you pick one. What would the word for this year be?
I'm going to go with interesting.
Why interesting?
Well, because we know that there's that Chinese proverb, and may you live in interesting times, which is actually a curse. But I think we live in interesting times, and I think and God, today is there'll be another big political decision today, and I think that we live in interesting times, and I think as business leaders doing what we do, then you just have to learn to respond and roll with these things, don't you? Because they're going to keep happening. They just happen, it would seem now, even faster than they ever have.
And but again, this speaks to your values, right? Because interest, when something could be a bit more negative, you go, interesting.
Definitely.
But you're absolutely right. It's interesting. But that curiosity as well, right?
Yeah.
That's something, okay, well, this might be challenging, or it could be a bit negative, or it could be really positive, but it's interesting. I'm keeping an openness to that.
Yeah, and I think you're brave, bold, brilliant. My three is curious, courageous, and kind. That I have in my head when I'm sort of, how am I approaching this? Because I think that will get you an awful long way.
Yeah. Two curlicers and a kicking cur, as they
Indeed.
used to teach us at school.
They did.
So Spotify playlist, Jason, which we always like a track to add to that from our wonderful guest. What's the song we're going to put on the playlist from you?
The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face by Roberta Flack.
Oh, it's romantic.
It's mine and my husband's song.
Oh, I love that. What's your husband called?
Roy.
We've got to give a shout out to you and Roy on the dance floor. I love that. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And we've not had it.
Have you not? Well, there you go. You see, you can add that one to the list.
Excellent. And the final question, Jason, what does brave, bold, brilliant mean to you?
I've probably given it away in saying that with my curious, kind, and courageous, because I think it amounts to the same thing. I think that how you approach through those three words of brave, bold, brilliant is exactly how you should think about life and careers, particularly because if you go in with that attitude, then you'll be open-minded to opportunity, and you've got a more than fighting chance of realizing your potential.
Amazing. What a way to end. Thank you, Jason.
You're most welcome.